All right, guys and guys. Beau Taylor with the Roof Group, Blackhawk Roofing, Beau Taylor and Associates Claim Consulting, and probably a few others that I'm not mentioning. And on today's Roof Rants, I want to go over a couple of things that we were talking about on the forum, and that was just how we can improve our adjuster appointments, our approval percentage. When I call in a claim, how can I make sure that I maximize my chance of getting that claim approved? And what should we all be doing differently if we're not doing certain key things or things that I think are very important? And so we'll start with the basics, and I'll say some things that sound a little rude at times, and that's because they are a little rude at times. And life's a motherfucker. What are you gonna do? So first things first is especially where I currently live. I'm in Texas, and so there's a different set of rules here. And a lot of people don't know what they're talking about. The industry out here is just offensively awful in a certain percentage. You know, let's say there's 8,000 roofing contractors. There's no licensing. Anyone can become a roofer. It's a buyer beware state. Texas has this attitude in the roofing industry of, like, ain't no one gonna tell me I can't roof my brother's house. And fair enough. I'm not going to tell you can't roof your brother's house. With that comes the fact that the guy at Arby's can also roof your brother's house. And the plumber on Wednesday, when a storm hits on Thursday, he is a roofer by Friday. And so we have 8,000 contractors in DFW alone. And I think there's something 238 in Louisiana because there's actually a system. You have to open up your financials to the state. You have to be audited. You have to pay. You have to take a difficult test. If you screw people over, they can pull that license. In Texas, it's buyer beware. And so on top of that, probably the greatest roofing companies, at least over half of the best roofing companies in the United States of America are right here, because this is one of the meccas of wind and hail and some crazy weather, tornadoes, hurricanes, poison monkeys. We've got it all in Texas. And so you get a lot of salespeople that lead with paying the deductible at the door, and you get a lot of salespeople that don't know what they're looking at. So the industry average approval rating, and by approval rating, we're judging that based on it goes over the deductible, and they're paid some amount of money. Because there's a lot of different terms. You'll hear someone say their claim was denied when really it was underpaid. Your roof's been approved, your claim has been approved for under your deductible, so here's a check for $0. Enjoy. That's an approved claim. Some would call it an underpaid claim, a delayed claim, if there's legitimate damage there. But so claims that go over the deductible and they're awarded money, 63% out of 100%, not 110 like you guys are used to giving effort wise. But so we're looking at 63%, 63 out of 100 claims are approved in our industry. We did the math over the last 6 years that I've been on the good side, the contractor's side, the hero side of the industry. I have an 87% approval rating. Why is that? And more importantly to me, will State Farm ruin that shortly, since they've gone full ham? And I think I've 6 denials in my last 20 dealings with them. So we'll see. But nonetheless, so what can we do to affect our approval percentages on adjustments? And so let's start with some of the basic stuff. First and foremost, you got to start to increase your approval percentage if you want to succeed during adjustments. You need to understand what we're even doing here. You think, well, there's hail damage. We're finding hail damage, and the insurance company has to pay for hail damage. A lot of things confuse hail damage, especially in Texas, due to the weather, the humidity, the heat. What's called thermal shock, which is just a fancy word for temperature changes or drastic temperature changes, which is Texas is one of the few places that has a day that it's legitimately in its 30s and then it's in its 70s the next day. And in prolonged periods of heat, it's very difficult on the materials up here. And so blistering looks a lot like hail. And you see a lot of people will say, man, this roof is destroyed. And I'll get out there and there's no hail damage on it whatsoever, in my opinion. But they're used to getting those things approved from certain adjusters and during CAT events. And so it's not their fault. But moving on. What we're really looking for, what your insurance owes for, is one thing and one thing only. They owe for sudden and direct accidental loss. Things they don't owe for: normal wear and tear, maintenance issues, manufacturer's issues, installation errors, things that you can see coming, that you could have repaired. That's not what insurance is for. Insurance is for things outside of your control, catastrophic loss, etc. So it begs the question now, what is sudden and direct accidental loss? Well, in all case law, it's going to be defined as one of two things. And overly generally speaking, policy to policy, everything's completely different, and it depends on the policy and what state you're in. And so public adjusters, don't rip my head off here. Just overly generally speaking, I would say this is 99% accurate or good advice. Sudden and direct accidental loss is going to be defined as one of two things has to occur, right? So we have to prove this to the insurance company, or they have to come to this conclusion on their own, that one of two things has happened. One, that there's a reduction in the service life of the material, or two, that it impedes the water shedding capability. So if I'm dealing with a stone-coated steel metal roof and they have a cosmetic waiver, showing dents to the adjuster isn't going to be my best bet when dealing with that on that specific adjuster appointment, because they're going to then say that's cosmetic damage. I'm going to want to look for something that impedes the water shedding capability. That would be then structural damage or actual damage that caused their roof to be devalued, or where it'd be denting on seams where the seams come together. That could be considered structural damage that impedes the water shedding capability. Where water can pool. If you can ever show that water will pool in a dent, I'd say that's a pretty strong argument for it's impeding the water shedding capability. The roof is not acting as it's designed to or was originally intended to. But Reduction, number one here, reduction in the service life of the material is kind of where I hang out. That's where I make my living. You know, that's where I do real well, is a reduction in the service life of the material on adjuster appointments. And how do we get there? So first things first, when we go to an adjuster's appointment, if you're in the restoration industry, if you're a salesman for a roofing company, if you own a roofing company, if you're thinking about getting into the insurance industry as a contractor, and you want to do insurance claims, you're going to have to deal with insurance companies. And knowing how to deal with them and what your role is one of the more important things in keeping your approval percentage high, or knowing which claims to call in. Do we call this claim in or do we not? I personally don't want to embarrass myself, so I don't want to call in a claim if there isn't fair and legitimate damage. And so we need to do a good job of doing inspections. And so it starts with what is a reduction in the service life of the material. And so the first thing I want to do with an adjuster is I don't ever want to tell them what to do, tell them how to do their job, tell them they need to pay for this is hail damage, all of those things. They're the expert on the subject for all intensive purposes. I'm not supposed to be the expert. I'm supposed to be there as a technical consultant, if I'm even supposed to be there. Most of them obviously don't want us there. But a role that I can play that's valuable, where I'm the authority, as the contractor, is on matters of construction and technical issues. I'm the authority on that, and they should, and generally do, defer to the contractor on those issues, just as we should defer to public adjusters or the adjuster on coverage issues. That's not our specialty, especially in Texas. We're not even really allowed to look into that and interpret policy. I have to be very careful how I word things in Texas. A lot of the times, the homeowners, I'll ask a lot of questions, and the homeowner was thinking this or that. But back to the point of the adjuster appointment, when that person gets out of their car, the first thing I want to do is let him know that I understand that he doesn't even need me there. He's the authority. Hey, look, you know what you're doing. I know you don't even need me here. And I'll let you do your thing, and I'm going to stay out of your way. There's a million different ways to approach this. I'm going to approach the way I did it the first 3 years, and the most popular approach, the simplest approach. And that is, and some people will get what I'm saying here, but for the first 3 years I was doing this, it was my first week. You know what I mean? So on that adjuster appointment, I can't go in there. No one learns anything by me telling them. They learn by me putting the information out there and letting them come to the conclusion themselves. So I ask a lot of questions. Hey, what are your thoughts on this? If you have a second, can you come look at this? I'd like to get your opinion on this over here. We've got some hits over on this metal fascia, and I wanted to get your take. Asking a lot of questions, because that way I'm not risking any acting as a public adjuster. I'm allowed to ask any question I want, especially if the homeowner, hey, the homeowner was telling me they believed that in their policy, even if there is a pre-existing vulnerability to their roof or a poor installation, if it's made worse by a covered peril like wind and hail, then it is still covered under their policy. Is that correct? I don't know. I'm just a contractor. I don't want to commit any crimes here in Texas by knowing the answer to that. If we were in Colorado, I know the answer to that. And I have an assignment, a claim of benefits. Maybe I'm in Colorado right now. And I wouldn't have to word it that way. And a pre-existing vulnerability to my roof, if if made worse by a covered peril, it then would be covered under the terms of the specific policy that might have been referenced. Because each policy is going to be different, but a lot of them have some similarities. So the first things first is let the guy do his job. Now, how do I affect the change on the close calls? And that's by finding some common ground, right? So if the adjuster comes out and he's not feeling it, and we know that a reduction in the service life of the material is what is proof of damage, let's start having some conversations. Let's unpack that. So we'll be up there, and I'm trying to find some common ground. I was on one where it's like, let's find some common ground here. Well, can we agree? Everyone's so used to this giant hail, this Texas-sized huge hail. I wish I was working that hail too, sir. I do. But this is 1-inch hail that we're out here on, and so it's just not going to be as devastating as we're normally looking for. We want to be working. But let's find some common ground. Can we agree that the roof didn't get better because of the storm? It's not stronger. Let's say it had 15 years left on its life. We can agree it doesn't have 16 years on its life now, right? It's no better for this storm. If the only real possibility is that this roof is now worse off because of the storm. If it had 15 years, we can agree there's a good amount of granular loss, which they will tell you granular loss in and of itself they do not pay for. But if excessive granular loss is agreed to by them, and then the shingle manufacturer will happily put in writing that if there's excessive granular loss due to a storm, then they will not warranty it. Same as a certain miles per hour will void your warranty. Well, if Mr. and Mrs. Williams had a warranty before the April 28th storm, and now they certainly do not have a warranty any longer. Here's a letter from the manufacturer, the shingle manufacturer. Well, then I'd say that's a reduction in the service life of the material. They lost value in their roof. They had a warranty, something to fall back on. Now they don't have a warranty. That, to me, is a very strong way to articulate to an adjuster, you do pay for granular loss. Without saying, yeah, you do. There's no need to argue with the guy in the field because, one, he's generally not the decision maker, so he doesn't even matter. It's nice to get it approved on the first try. But, two, if we don't agree, it's okay. It's agree to disagree. I'll see you on the next one. Because there are other avenues to challenge a bad result or an adjuster making an incorrect call. And so, finding some common ground. I had an adjuster once where I'm trying to find some common ground, and he wouldn't agree to anything. I don't know. He thought I was trying to set him up or something. Where I finally said, okay, all right, like you're going to agree to that, don't agree to this, you don't agree to this. Can we agree we're on a roof right now? Can we agree we're standing on a roof right now? He goes, I'm not agreeing to anything that you say. And I was like, man, if you can't agree that we're standing on a roof right now, we're both in for a long dog fight. This is not going to be a pleasant day for either of us if we can't agree that we're standing on a roof right now. And so you're not always going to be able to find common ground. You're not always going to get them to agree that you're both just standing on a roof. Sometimes that's not happening. He's going to be like, I'm not standing on a roof. I'm on a spaceship to the moon and you're in a boat. And it's like, ugh, this is going to be hard to find common ground. However, if you take it as the 80-10-10 rule, you're generally going to be able to find some common ground. Okay, can we agree at least that that the shingle is not better off than it was before the storm. Starting off with things like that, as dumb as that sounds, will go a long way as you start to set these traps and reel this guy in with some coverage issues. I had a mentor when I was first starting out. He's one of the top project managers in the country now, for the top specialty roofing company in the United States of America, Precision, here in DFW. The best company for Luigi, for if you're doing something radical and you want to win, you want your roof to win an award or be considered for one, you go to Precision. And they do large loss, they do specialty, they have a network of some of the smartest people in the industry. And Curtis Cobb was my boss. He was the owner of Better Care Roofing in Louisiana, and who originally kind of trained me in all of this. And he used to get into these knockdown, drag out arguments with the adjuster. 2 minutes in, they're screaming at each other, yelling in each other's face. And it was so uncomfortable for me. I remember I would hanging back a lot and being like, what are you doing? You're screwing it up. You're screwing it up for me, the sales guy who signed this contract. But I would watch it every single time without fail come full circle. And by the end of it, they weren't arguing. They'd found some common ground, and Kurt had earned the guy's respect. Oftentimes they're wrong. Oftentimes we're wrong in an industry. Our sales guys they deal with a lot of idiots. And so you can't be too surprised when they treat you like an idiot. And we deal with a lot of idiots. And so we need to be careful treating all of them like idiots. And so I want to connect with this person. I want to find some common ground. I want to not tell him how to do his job, but I want to help him come across the information and tell a story. Tell the story of the damage of this house, but I have to earn that man's respect sometimes. And that includes butting heads. Curtis was butting heads with this person to let him know, I'm not some dumb fucking salesman. I know what I'm talking about, and I'm elite at this. And so whether you pay for it or I go to your supervisor, we're going to continue this discussion, and I have some good points. And by the end of it, oftentimes, they'd end up just paying for the roof because they knew he would go over their head to their supervisor, present the same evidence, and they might not like what their supervisor tells them and decides. A lot of time they don't have the confidence to buy a roof, and they don't have the confidence to deny a roof either when someone else is carrying that bravado. Because there's two roles you can play. You can play the authority role, or you can play the opposite role. And that's what I was the first 3 years, and that's the new guy. My first 3 years, it was my first week. And it was, hey, if I'm going to be here, I might as well try to learn something. And so it's, can you show me? I'm new at this. I'm not exactly great. Just, can you show me what you're looking for as you're going through this thing? Will you give me a rundown of what is damage, what is not? Just help me understand this industry because I really like it. Who doesn't want to show someone? If I'm enthusiastic about something, if I like doing something, and then I run into someone else who knows less about it, but they want to get into it and they want to learn, and they enjoy what I do, what I enjoy, I'm going to latch on to that person. I want to show them anything and everything they want to learn. If they have a good attitude about it. So I'm up there and being respectful. I'm asking questions, and I'm letting him be the authority. I'm letting him take the lead. I'm letting him teach me. And I'm legitimately being open-minded and trying to learn some things. Sometimes I hear some of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. And sometimes I get a little nugget that I can learn something from. Another huge thing with adjustments is knowing the carrier. Probably the biggest thing. A lot of it's a roll of the dice. Do I get an independent? Do I get a staff adjuster? You can control that by calling in on certain dates of loss, but you got to be in a really storm-prone area. You know, if you got four dates of loss to pick from, you're cool. You know, then you can call it in on a cat date. Now, you know, I'm probably going to get an independent. I can control some variables that way, but really knowing that Allstate and State Farm and USAA and Farmers and State Auto and Nationwide are all completely different animals, right? Nationwide, that adjuster, he's going to be cradle to grave. There's no adjuster I can go over. That's the guy I have to convince, period. He owns that claim the entire time. Allstate and USAA, don't take them a wind claim, you know, unless you got 24 shingles in a test square, plus it's spread out in other areas, and it's non-repairable, and they're still going to deny it, probably. A lot of us have probably experienced maybe a roof that we didn't think was going to get bought, and it got approved, and we almost didn't know why. There's a lot of variables going on behind the scenes, and maybe he just didn't know what he was looking for. Maybe he's getting a divorce and he needed some money and he was straight up committing insurance fraud. I don't know. But something I experience a lot with certain carriers is that for whatever reason, they don't like wind and non-repairable as an argument. And so I'm not going to take that argument to them as my first argument. I'll watch these carriers buy a roof on hail when hail is not the primary peril of or loss. But for whatever reason, their boss yells at them or gets yelled at if they pay for wind. So if they know it's fair and legitimate, I've prepackaged 3 different pitches for this guy on how he can buy the roof and a storyline that all comes together of really the damage is wind here. You know, we got a lot of wind damage, some hidden wind damage, some creased tabs. It's getting worse, some mat transfer. It's pulling out chunks. This thing's non-repairable. It's old, it's brittle. We're in Texas. Within 10 years, these things become a real problem to repair. But I know you guys don't love, I know your boss doesn't love the wind argument. So we've got a little bit of hail too here. We've got some soft metals, we've got collateral damage. I think we've got the story and you could get the pictures to get it bought under hail, wind, non-repairable. All of those things need to be a factor in the story that is told to the insurance company. And so like anything else, the first thing we're going to do, right, you're taught, is to go around and inspect for collateral damage. Because if this roof doesn't have some collateral damage, if I'm in a legitimate storm, whether I have collateral damage, good collateral damage, or I don't have good collateral damage, I have to document all of that, and I need to come up with a reason for why. Because they're going to ask. You need to put yourself in the carrier's shoes. Say if I was an insurance company, why are these screens not dented up? They're going to ask me that. And I better have an answer for why that is. Well, it's facing this direction. You've got those 2 trees right there, and I think that's what protected it. But if you come around here to the side, you'll see these got beat up pretty good. I better be able to explain the story of that house, because all he wants, the insurance company is the life out of him and his soul. And he's just going to work. And imagine if you worked for Allstate or State Farm and they're like kicking back, legitimate damage. And, you're just this one of a million people. And now all of a sudden you get in trouble if you pay for a legitimate claim. I don't know if that's happening at State Farm. I'm just saying that it must be tough to work in big business, the insurance world. And all of a sudden, I just want to go home. I just want this to pass across my boss's desk and have him not yell at me. And so sometimes I need to be the professional. I need to learn about my craft, and I need to be able to present to him a story that makes sense so he can record that story, submit it, make sense to the boss, they sign off on it. And so I better understand why when I go up here, I had an Allstate adjuster come down and hand me the phone with a supervisor on it saying, well, okay, if this is all legitimate hail up there on the roof, then why don't you tell me why there's not one single dent on the garage? Like that would, like you'd gotten me, like somehow the two had to go together. And I remember I kind of looked over and there was over a 4-foot overhang of the roof. And I was just like, I don't know if you're seeing these pictures there, Sherlock Holmes, but there's a 4.5-foot overhang by the garage. And so I would just assume that the hail wasn't able to hit the garage, and it did hit the roof. And all of a sudden, things changed. Shockingly, they didn't think of that first, but the point being, you need to be able to give these guys an explanation of how and why things went. This vent up here isn't damaged, sir, because it's galvanized. We're dealing with 1-inch hail. That's not going to dent this type of vent. So this is very typical of damage in this sort of situation. This doesn't exclude the roof. This is exactly what would happen if this roof were damaged by 1-inch hail. And so, same thing. Why is this vent cap not damaged? Well, a couple of things. It's got some dings on it. Are they huge? No. Are they little pea-sized stuff? Yes. Because this storm in particular, what we're finding is there was a mix of different sizes. And the larger hail, which we have recorded at 1 3/4 inches, and here's all my data, was sporadically spread out. So it didn't hit every vent that's 6 inches in diameter. Sometimes those vents get missed. And I would say that is actually very typical with what we're finding on the other roofs that we're getting approved. And so by doing my homework and being able to explain away the no's, they're going to use a lot of things to try to disqualify. Well, if this, then this. If this, then this. No, 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 no. I want to focus on the yeses. The best thing you can do is all the little technicality BS they use to exclude stuff. Common sense wants you see homeowners say this all day long, and noobs, when you start out in sales, well, they paid for the neighbor's house, and they didn't even pay for this house, and the insurance company will say, sorry, it has to stop and start somewhere. There's too many variables, different age and condition of the roofs, different materials, different quality material, different age of material, facing different directions. One building's tall, one's short. There's tornadic winds versus straight line winds, soft hail, sharp hail, big hail, little hail, density. There's so many variables that fairly, they just got to look at it case by case basis. I can't buy the roof because that one was damaged. I have to just document damage on this one to pay for this roof. And so the same stuff they use when they're like, well, why isn't this? And why isn't this that? I'll say, I don't know. I mean, I've made a lot of money with this saying. Just saying, hey, I don't know. You know what? The one consistent thing about hail is that it's inconsistent. But I think we can agree that this is consistent with storm damage. This is consistent. I'm not looking for hail damage. I'm looking for, in a hail event, anything that is consistent with storm damage or hail damage or wind damage. And then at that point, generally, they should err on the side of the policyholder. So get your stories together. Tell a story. Know your insurance company, because we want to get it approved within their parameters. Understand the inner workings of their company and how you can apply pressure, what they want to see, what they don't, and then turn your arguments towards the things that they will generally approve of. Never start disrespecting this person. When I say arguing, it's to earn their respect, to show them that you're not just a salesman, that you actually know what you're talking about. Never disrespect with them, and don't argue to argue. There's no reason to argue, especially since they're not the decision maker most times. The desk adjuster is. But I don't have to be nice, but I have to be respectful. You know, so I may get into it with this guy, but I'll never disrespect him. And for the most part, get out of there. Let them know that they're in charge and get out of their way. And then hang back. And if they ask you some questions, then you can start telling your story. Otherwise, I try not to even bring up a roof or roofing to start an adjustment. If I don't have to talk about a roof or roofing, that roof's getting bought. You know, I will show up and say, hey, my name is Beau. I'm a part-time Instagram model. And my boss makes us pretend we're a part of the estimate process. But I'm actually just a roof salesman. And so I'm going to hang back and let you do your thing. I know you don't need me. And if you have any questions, just yell for me. But then I don't hang back, and I start to connect with the guy. And I say anything that doesn't involve roofing. So where'd you come in from today? Did you have a long drive? How many do they have you running every day? Oh, that's a lot. Oh, that's not a lot. I used to be an IA. I couldn't stand the paperwork. Yeah. So I came over to the good side. When are you coming over? All right. Yeah, so did you see, you heard about the Raiders, the old football squadron? Think they're going to have a good team this year? I don't know. I don't even know anything about the Raiders. But, I know a little bit about the Raiders, but they suck. But, the point being, don't talk about roofing if you don't have to talk about roofing. Because he's going to go